and welcome to a new episode of From the Honeycomb podcast. I am your host, Katerina. Each week, we dive into a blend of topics that resonate with the soul. Whether you're an architect enthusiast, have a passion for Wanderlust, want to discover holistic approaches to rejuvenate your body and mind, or are intrigued to learn about Vastu Shastra with a modern approach, you've come to the right place. Join me as I sit down with inspiring, like-minded women from various walks of life. We will delve into their journeys to discuss the challenges and moments that define their paths. So sit back, relax, and let the spark of positive energy ignite your curiosity. Hi, it's me, Katerina. Before we jump into today's episode, I want to share with you something that can change the trajectory of your life. If you are ready to start your own architecture firm but are feeling overwhelmed by where to begin, I understand, because I felt the same way when I first embarked on my entrepreneurial journey. This is why I have created the ebook, The Mindful Blueprint for Launching Your Architecture Firm. This comprehensive workbook contains everything I wish I had known before starting my own firm. From building a solid business plan to creating your brand, The Mindful Blueprint for Launching Your Architecture Firm offers a step-by-step guide tailored to your timeline, whether you're launching your firm today, next month, or in a few years. Dive into essential topics like financial planning, organization strategies, and how to secure your first client, all in one convenient resource. That's right, you don't have to spend hours researching. I have done that for you so you can focus on building your business. And that's not all. With your purchase, you'll also receive an exclusive meditation for business owners, mindfulness tips, a crystal guide for support, and gratitude exercises to help you stay focused and positive throughout your journey. Turn your dream of having your own firm into a reality with the Mindful Blueprint for Launching Your Architecture Firm. Click on the link in the show notes to get your copy today. Now, let's dive into the episode. Today, I am joined by Alexandra Chaves, a designer and AIA Austin WIA Chair-elect of 2024. Alexandra is the founder of the WIA Profile Subcommittee, and she is currently working towards licensure. Alexandra, welcome to From the Honeycomb.
Thank you, Katerina. I'm so glad to be here.
I'm excited to have you on. And as you know, we begin every episode by sharing something that we are grateful for in the present moment. So what are you grateful for?
I am grateful to be alive to share my story.
I love it. I love it. That's really deep. I love it. And why are you alive to share your story? Or why are you happy to be alive to share your story?
Well, again, your life can be taken away from you in any moment, and reflecting on many things. I believe that this episode is going to air the same day as my grandmother's birthday, and she's going to be turning 102. So
Wow, that's right.
I know. So it's like reflecting on that she has lived a century long, a couple of years more.
Yeah.
It's just amazing. So again, just to being grateful to be alive and to share my journey, because everybody's journey is different and it's in life. So I feel like that I just wanted to say that I'm always grateful for that.
Oh, I love it. And that's right. I remember about her birthday. Oh, that's so special.
Yes.
And so, Alexandra, share with the listeners your story of why did you choose architecture and kind of what's brought you to where you are today?
So for me, architecture, I didn't have anybody in my family that was an architect. So but I was very artistic very early on, and I have dyslexia and also attention disorder. So I was always diagnosed that I would never make it to college. It was only a technical degree, but my mom never told me this. And I always went to like neurologists, and I have medicine sometimes to help me out to focus and things like that. And then I went to other like study groups to help me how to best study for the subject, because I would be good in all of like the visual things, but never on the technical side or math in general. And at the beginning, I was afraid that going into architecture was going to be a lot of structures, but it's the reverse. A lot of people like, yeah, you're gonna be like doing
Yep.
numbers all the time and like it's calculating these. Like that's why you partner with your engineers and your structural engineers or your civil engineer, whoever you need to. But yeah, and I knew from the very beginning. I started in Venezuela, my career path, and then my parents were transferred to the United States, and I decided to stay on. And then I was like, okay, I'll do my degree here. I finish my bachelor's, and then I will come to the States and do my master's. But then things politically got very hectic in Venezuela, where I'm originally from.
Mhm.
So, and I had the dual citizenship, sorry, because my grandfather was born in Brooklyn and my mom automatically was a daughter of an expat. So when I was born and then my brother, they were able to pass on, like look for the minimal law that my mom could pass on that. So I always had the dual citizenship. So for me, the jump was easier as an immigrant, but still nonetheless always, everybody has their own struggles. So yeah, I didn't have to apply to a school before getting into the States, so that was an easy part for that, where a lot of people have to like, "Okay, I have to be accepted and get the visa and do all that," so I didn't have to do that. I actually had to wait here until like, apply to schools to see where I was gonna continue my studies for, like, 9 months, and then I landed in Savannah in SCAD, and it was like a culture shock at the beginning. Not that I've never been to the States, it's more like the language of architecture at a professional level or when you're
Mhm.
studying. And I remember vividly that one of the first studios that I had that I started on the summer, they were like, "Yeah, you need to do a floor plan." And I thought I needed to draw a plant goes on the floor instead of an actual floor plan. And I was like,
Yeah.
that's when you like, man, the
Mhm.
cultural like factors here and about like learning terminology was really important. And also like I came from doing meter scales instead of inches.
Oh, yeah.
So did you have that same?
So I was born in the Czech Republic. I came here when I was 5, but during university, I studied abroad in Paris for 1 semester where we used metric. But actually, my very first internship was back in Prague. It was between my second and third year of architecture school. And I really resonate with the language barrier of like, I speak Czech fluently, but not architectural
Mhm.
vocabulary. Like that, at that internship, I was like, I didn't know what a floor plan was. I was like, oh, where are all the rooms labeled? That's how I think I was explaining it. And then they're like, oh, it's called budores, and that means floor plan. I was like, I've never heard this word in my
Yeah,
entire life. And so it's learning that. And then the metric, I think it's easier to go from inches
correct.
to
then
metric
then to metric
rather
twist.
than the other
Yes.
way.
Yes. It's so much easier. And I was like, why do we have to fraction everything so much?
You'd think by now I would be like a whiz at dividing by 12. Nope. I rely on my calculator so much. Yeah, no, it's really hard.
Yeah, no, I agree. So at the beginning, that was like a big little struggle there that I had. But again, with my HDHD, I always look for anything that I was doing in school. If I needed a tutor, like I knew for structure classes, I was like, where's the tutor classes?
Mm,
Because I knew that those were my struggles. So
mhm,
yeah, and then I just went through college. I did the bachelor's. I was able to stay one more year at that same school and get a master's degree. So I didn't get the exposure to do internships in the middle of it because I was transfer student and I started on a summer and I did every summer in order to graduate earlier. But it worked out. I really loved the school that I ended up selecting when I came to the States because it was a more visual school. I think SCAD is architecture is one of the technical careers, I would say. Everything else is like they have jewelry, they have graphic design, they have visual
uh-huh.
arts, they have all these film and product design things like that. But I think the only one that requires like an actual like math class, it's architecture. Everything else is like much more artistic. So that for me was really good. And also there were smaller classrooms, and for attention
Mm,
disorder people in general, you need to focus, and there wasn't like auditorium classrooms like I've seen in other universities. So that was really advantageous for me. And then I went to New York and my mom's like, "You're crazy. That city's so big." And I'm like, "Well, when am I going to do it? When I have kids and I can't afford it?"
mhm.
So I decided to go there, and my first interview, they said, "Oh, with this portfolio, you're never gonna get a job." And the next one, like, "I wanna hire you." And I was like, "Okay." It's the ambiguity of
Wow.
life. And but yeah, I started working in New York, making my way into it. I actually also did start it when I was in college, going back to college. I did I started to get involved with the AIA, but as a student level.
Mhm.
So yeah, there was a little chapter there. In New York, I attended a couple meetings, but I wasn't as involved as I am right now here in Austin. But yeah, my life in New York was great. I was able to do many different. I always been focused in residential for some reason. That's where I
Mhm.
got hired for the very beginning, and they always been small firms. I think I've never been the type that I will go to a Gensler or a Perkins and Wills or something like that. They're like
Mhm.
worldwide big firms that you can transfer between cities and countries and and, and
Mhm. Yeah.
everything. But yeah, I know. I think that that worked to my advantage in a way. And then I survived the recession in New York. I was one of the first few people that was laid off in 2008. And then you
Mm.
start questioning yourself. I was like, am I good enough for this? But it was like the first time you were like
Mhm.
out of job. I was like, what should I do? And it took, of course, it took a couple of years to me to actually pivot it back to architecture. I was unemployed for over a year and a half. Thankfully, because of the dual citizenship, I was able to collect unemployment. But then you start doing things here and there. And I was able to land a job at a solar firm.
Wow.
Yeah, it was really interesting. So I did that and I had to start as an intern unpaid just to kind of like get out
Oh
of.
my
I
gosh.
know. But again, and then eventually it started paying, even though it was like nothing compared to what somebody starting would get at an entry level, but
Mhm.
I was grateful for that. I had the opportunity at least. I was not doing architecture per se. We were just designing solar systems that will go into like more commercial multi-type like strip malls that needed to offset their
Mm,
energy and
mhm.
things like that. And that was like early on in like 2000, I think I want to say 2000, almost 10. That's when I almost found that, or late 2009 or something like that when I
Mhm.
found that job. And then I was able to pivot back to architecture at a very renowned firm called Campion Platt in New York, which is specializes in boutique interior architecture pretty much. We would just do interior architecture, residential, everything from
Mhm.
the actual designing of the houses to the interiors and the furniture.
Mm.
And he was mainly in New York or in the Hamptons. And then after that, I met my husband while in the recession and we had our kid. And after we had our son, we're like, okay, New York is getting tight for us.
Mm.
Like it was to drop him at daycare, go to the job site, run back to the
Mhm.
office, go back to pick him up. And if you're late, they're like, I don't know, it was like $25 a minute. It was just ridiculous
Oh my
amount of
gosh.
money for childcare. And my
Oh
parents,
yeah,
even
that's a
though
whole nother topic.
I know it is a whole 'nother topic, and I know hopefully the United States can catch up because I was
Mhm.
it's always a struggle for especially a new family and a mother that's trying to get a career to kinda, like, make both.
Mhm.
So we made it to Austin because my parents are in Houston, my husband's side of the family was in Dallas, and that was, like, closest to home since no like, my direct family is no longer in Venezuela. My mom, my dad, and my brother, they're all
Mhm.
in Houston, my sister-in-law, so it was more like this was where home would be.
Mhm.
So, yeah, we decided to make the move. I was laid off, and I told my husband, "I'm not gonna actually look for another job. I think this is the opportunity for us to get out of New York if we wanted to." So so we did the jump. We did the jump and came to my parents in Houston for a couple months, and then we started applying for Austin, and I found a job within 2 months or a month, and they waited for me because it was during December. My brother was getting married. I was like, let's just do it in January. I'll start in January. But I feel like by Thanksgiving, and we moved out of New York, Halloween Day. Yeah,
Oh wow.
so yeah, it was pretty quick. And then from there, I met some great friends in my first firm, and I pivoted to a women-owned firm, and we're all moms and we're all women. And not until I got to work with Karina, my boss, Karina Cole at Restructure Studios, that I said, okay, and I had finished all my IDP hours when I was in New York. It said that I was like,
Mhm.
maybe it is a possibility for me to like actually pursue my license and
Mhm.
actually do it. In New York, I don't know why I felt like efficient upon, and I wasn't sure if I was gonna land there. And I knew that the exams would be some
Mhm.
kind of different. And when I was there, it was more like I think there were 9 tests at the time,
Oh
and
wow.
then they changed it to 7, and then the 5.
Mm.
I keep
Mhm.
yeah, keep going back
Yeah.
and forth, and the rolling clock. And I'm glad that
Yep.
that's over. So I don't have to. deal with that.
Yes.
So yeah, it's in my horizon that after I'm done with women in architecture and that I want to do it. It's a lot of work. Our committee is very, very active. I was able to get involved very early. I think the committee started in 2018, and I didn't get to start getting involved until like late 2019, and then 2020 happened, pandemic happened, and that's when I was more involved. So for me, it was like, yeah, it was the crate. I went on the meetings on Zoom because again, we were in the pandemic and asking about, I wanted to know who are the leaders, who are the sponsors who sponsor our committee, and who are the members. And it turned out to be something completely different. I've never got a chance to do that. And then because my husband is a filmmaker, I was able to get him to do some of the videos. So, and then the pandemic, yeah, when the pandemic happened, the chair that took over, she's like, no, she didn't want to be interviewed, I believe, at the beginning. And then she's like, let's focus this on these other leaders. And so we went and started interviewing them, and we actually crossed borders because we did some people in Austin, some people in Houston, some people in San Antonio, and some people in Dallas the first year. But it was a great exposure. To this date, I think it has brought the community to learn that we are all in different paths as women leaders, even if
Hmm.
you're young or older or wherever you are in your career. And every time we go to these interviews, I just learn so much because everybody's path is so different.
Hmm.
And I'm just grateful for that opportunity. And I've never, ever in my life thought that I would be working with my husband in that capacity. I know your husband is a GC, and like it's very expected that you like,
Hmm.
architect GC would never like filmmaker architecture.
Hmm.
Kind of like
I was gonna ask, what does your husband do? Because I was interested. Like, it always interests me, women in architecture. What does your husband do? Because it's always interesting. I think it's such an interesting dynamics. But I think filmmaker too. It's still on the creative side, where it's still. I think there's a little bit of that creativity, as if it was an accountant or hedge fund or something like that, or something financial.
yeah.
Where it's like more numbers. I mean, even though architecture kind of is numbers, but like you were saying, it's architecture isn't all numbers. I just gave a presentation at a middle school and high school, and my biggest message was you don't have to be
Mhm.
good at math and science to be an architect. Like, don't let that scare you, because there is so much you can do in architecture and the creativity. And so don't worry if you're not good at math. I was okay at math, but I have a calculator. The computers do everything for you.
I agree. Yeah, I feel the same thing. And that's one of the things that I feel like become our own imposter person that's letting you like, no, you can't do this. But it's actually, yes, it's you always have tools in order to get past it. So yeah, I had my husband that is a filmmaker, and I was able to get more involved in the women in architecture because of that. And then because of the pandemic, also we were trying to start do site tours that were project led by women or GCs or engineers or landscape architects or anything. And because he was a filmmaker, we were able to go and record these. And then whoever was the site chair at the moment, we will go with the project architect, record all the things. And at the beginning, I thought she was going to do that with my husband, but she's like, oh, no. Well, again, the pandemic and everybody's like social distancing and all that. We
Hmm.
were always wearing masks. And so it fell on me because he doesn't know what he needs to record. Like he's a
Of
filmmaker, but you need to
course.
tell him what to
Yes.
record unless he knows about the topic. But
Right.
he didn't know about like, you need to record this detail about the wood and the concrete and, meeting each other and all these
Yeah,
things
yeah.
to kind of look at the project. So we were able to get a lot of exposure like that. And it was so funny seeing him wear his fur hat when we actually went to a job site that was under construction because some of them were finished, but then it's like, yeah, you have to wear a hat.
Yep. And so, what does WIA do to help women in architecture? Because I'm just thinking, I don't know if my Orange County AIA branch has WIA, but what is it that you guys do to help encourage other women in architecture?
Well, our mission, is to promote, validate, and illuminate the role of the women within the architectural field through fostering community, fellowship, education, and outreach. That's the mission for the AIA Austin Women in Architecture Committee. So it started with a couple of dinner series before I got involved, where they get different women in the field to talk about what they do, and we will all get together for dinners. And then, yeah, when 2020 happened, and they had a couple presentations at different homes before, and then 2020 happened, and they were trying to get some film series at the beginning, but that didn't get to a point that it developed too much. Then we started with
Mm-hmm.
like the profiles where we were interviewing leaders in the community to talk about their journey, and the site tours. They started virtually. Now to this day, we have initiatives that it's called Call to Action, where we are trying to teach or like make an awareness at a high school level that there is the exposure to architecture. Then at the college level, we ended up starting a scholarship to help with tuition for two women that non-binary or that are going into school for the UT School of Architecture. So it's related here in Austin. We started selling T-shirts to fund licensure, women that are going for licensure. And we have our pins as well. And then there's a college week at the end of the fall where we actually go, we do that virtually purposely so we can get people from other states to join us as well. And the same thing, we always try to get, it's a whole week long of virtual events where we get either students that are just graduating in their first year into workforce, people that have been in the first 10 years, more experienced people, and then people that are actually practice, like they actually graduated as an architect, but now are not practicing architecture per se no longer, which I think it's very important
Mm-hmm.
because a lot of people pivot. They study architecture, and again, we have our very on next year's AIA Nationals president, Evelyn Lee. She's an architect, but she is not practicing architecture, but she's going to be the president of the AIA Nationals. So if things like that. So we try to do that, and we try to end it with a networking event. Our committee is so big and so massive that we rely on our like literally volunteers, and I was one of them, and that's how I got to be chair leg, because I volunteer and continue on trying because I really wanted to do more. I was craving more about, like, I wanted to learn about more leaders, and like people started sending information to us. We also try to like do a spotlight series where we spotlight women that are underrepresented and they work beside a firm, and like, they don't own sometimes their design, or don't get to be elevated with their work. So that's some of the things that we do. Just
Just a
different
few
things.
things.
I
Just
know.
a few things. That's
We were
it.
kind
That's
of
it.
like flushers. There was one year that we actually had bike tours. I know there's
Wow.
a guided tour for architecture here that is, they try to run it and put like do a write up. You can either
Mm-hmm.
go there walking or do your own bike tour yourself. And then one year they contacted the Women in Architecture, and we did like a whole tour of women project architecture women that had finished a project, either commercial or like, I don't think there were any residential. Mainly everything's been commercial or hotels or things like that. So they're like in the maps,
Mm-hmm.
and we were able to coordinate with each project architect once, and we did two different tours, one in the spring and one in the fall, because there were too many stops, and they were going to be too
Mm-hmm.
long of
Right.
routes. But yeah, there's things like that that happen. There was a wind down during like COVID that we would just get in Zoom and just do things. We started this year doing coffee meetup for co-working people that are working hybrid, or like people like you that you're a sole proprietarian, you just work from your home and you wanted to meet up with other people in the industry. We are trying to start like we meet up 8 o'clock in the morning in a co-working coffee shop and mingle, and you can either stay and work there, or if you need your focus you go back home, but at least you were able to kind of like collaborate with other people and meet other people that are in your same industry. So
Hmm. Wow, that's incredible. Such amazing community outreach. And one question I wanted to ask is you work with a firm
correct.
that's all women, What is that experience like? Because that's interesting. The first internship I ever had when I was in the Czech Republic, that was a female-owned firm, and there was one other woman working there. And that was really the only experience I had to being full-blown all woman in architecture. I did have an internship at an interior design firm, which was also a woman, but really it's been all majority male. And so, what is it like working with women, and especially women who are also mothers?
It's been amazing because they understand, we all understand the life goes on besides work
Mhm.
all the time, and there are other actual, like, things around it, like school plays or performances, or they're ending their summer camp and there's like a whole like recital and things like that, or parent teacher conference and you have to get, or you have to volunteer because they're doing this party and things like that. So it's always been very flexible and understanding that we have a duty as a professional, but we also have a duty as our outside of our office and being a wife or mother or sister or anything. So it's been great. We all get along really great. Some of our staff is part time. I was the first full on, and to this day, I'm still the full time employee besides my boss. We are the only ones that are full time employee
Mhm.
because, again, as a small firm, you understand like overhead, it costs, and to keep the actual office afloat and all those things. And I'm always trying to be cautious with that. Whenever like there's times or if we're want to go to a conference and things like that, I always ask, is this something that you can support? If not, I'm totally fine if you can't. But it's always been great. And also another thing that I really love about my firm is that Karina not only wanted to validate our work, she started a sister company called Arbor Plans. And we started it in 2019 that sells pre-designed architectural home sets, so for people that do not have the actual cash to actually invest on an architect, because architectural services are expensive, you can buy a pre-designed home and then just put it on a lot. She launched that in 2019, and she gave every designer in the office, even the part-timers, ownership of their design. So when you go to the website, they say, yeah, they say
Oh,
it's like, this
wow.
one was designed by Alexandra, this one was designed by Melissa or Maite or Karina.
Oh, very cool.
It's pretty awesome that even that some of us are not licensed yet. There's Karina and one other that are architects already, that she's also giving full ownership or our designs that can be sold. And then there's a couple of my houses that have been built around Austin now, so it's pretty cool to kind of like see that something you design it's
Of
already built.
course.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so yeah, that's been amazing. And that business still like parallel going with, and when people can afford our services, we always like, well, we have this other side of the business, and like, most of it, it's like completely design, and but if that fits your budget best, it's just site adaptation at this point that we will have to do. And of course you get charged hourly, or again, that's the only thing that we cannot sell
Mhm.
you because we don't know where you're going to put it.
Right. No, absolutely. It's something I've been thinking about and playing with is having like a catalog of ideas for designs like ADUs, which is in California, the
Correct.
accessory dwelling
Mhm.
units are a big topic. Everybody wants an ADU. And so, unfortunately, where I work in the few towns that I work in along the coast, it is everybody's converting or adding on. And so but I've been thinking about, I already have one design I worked on when I first started out because I needed something to do when I wasn't working full time. And so I did design an ADU, and I'd like to be able to possibly sell that floor plan in the future. And so it's interesting. It's such a great business concept as well. And it's amazing too then that your boss, even though you're not licensed, has put your work out there, has put your name out there, and you can see your work, and that's incredible support
Yeah,
on her
and
behalf.
that's what we sell pretty much. We sell main houses and ADUs. Because it's, yeah, we Austin is becoming the same thing. I feel like California, like, everybody's craving for the space, and most of the bigger lots are being either subdivided or developers are coming into building more homes. And actually, there's a new rule that just actually came in effect recently here in Austin, that it's called a home initiative plan. And I think now you can build up to 3 units in your property. But of course, there's restrictions
Wow.
now of when you build three,
Mhm.
there is certain square footage that you have to maintain, and either the main houses or the
Mhm.
ADUs are in the property. So yeah, it's been advantageous. It's always, the struggle is it's site adaptation, I think, which you have in California as well. Again, you always have to hire an architect for that, and then we always put I think in our disclosures for the urban plan side, it's always like that. You have to like find a structural engineer because you need the foundation,
Mm-hmm.
and there's no way we can give you a foundation right now because we don't know where you're putting it.
Absolutely.
We did partner with a structural engineer, and we're able to include at least some framing for when we sell the plans.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like pretty much a full on set that has framing, plans, RCPs, power, interior elevations, all that. And then we also are like the same thing that we're selling homes. We're also selling interior packages where they have like four different
Mm.
styles, like, typical modern, desert, or minimalistic, or industrial, things like that. Because again, if you
Oh,
don't find an
interesting.
interior designer or don't have the time, then you can purchase this, and at least some of the selections are already pre-made for you.
Mm.
So yeah, and it was funny because it was like just after a turn a year, it's when we were like literally working on this, and Karina went on a self retreat, a weekend self retreat about where she wanted her business to go,
Mm-hmm.
and she came up with this idea. So we were like, let's run with it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's such a creative approach, and it's that kind of passive income idea as well. And it kind of gets to highlight her whole company, like you individually. Like I said before, like put your name out there and then highlight your individual style. So I think that's really incredible. That it's a great smart business approach
Yeah,
for sure.
so yeah, that's one of the things that I think a lot of people think that working for a women-owned firm is like, oh, they're going to be fighting all the time because women sometimes fight. But I feel different. I feel like it's a camaraderie. Like we're always like in for it, whatever it takes. So if we're doing a submission for because we want to win an award locally or send something, we're all trying to collaborate to work on it and be conscious about, okay, we need to do some billable hours because we also need to get paid.
Yeah.
Things
Right.
like
Yeah.
that because those things take time, and yes,
hmm
and again, you never know, but you have to put yourself out there in order to people know your name. So
Mhm. Yep. It is. And it is. And it's the marketing and the networking, especially. And I think with you being part of AIA, that is going to help you also get your name
mhm.
out as well and have that
Yeah, and
support.
Karina, my boss, she was the chair last year for women in architecture, and a lot of people were like,
Mhm.
"Yeah, choose Alexandra," but because we have such a small firm, she's like, "There's no way we can both be doing this at the same time and not." So she's like, "After I'm done, you have total freedom, and I'm totally support you to go for it." So yeah, she knows what it is to do the volunteer work. She has done it. She's been a chair also for the residential committee as well in the AIA Austin chapter.
Mm.
So again, for us, I think, and I always tell her the same thing. I was like, besides putting my name out there, I'm also putting the name of the firm because I'm representing where I work with it. So to that, it's just like we always try to be conscious of both.
Of course. Of course. And so have you noticed with AIA, do you get work? Do you get clients through a lot of the AIA?
Yes, sometimes. Yeah, sometimes people. Yeah, again, we do have a lot of different committees, and some of them are. There's one called Ally Members Roundtable, and pretty much those ally members are all of the other people that are not architects. They're like mostly providers or anything. Recently, we were trying to partner to make an event, a makers event, and we went to this great facility that they have, and you can either 3D print things in wood or metal and things like that. So those all these people, it's very important sometimes to partner with all of these allies that you have because again, through them you get work, and sometimes even the director of the AIA will call and say like refer you as an architect to get a new job. So it does. I think that the benefits of being a member of the AIA, it's infinite. It's you can get involve very little or you can super get involved. I would say, and be part of like a committee and things like that. But
Right.
yeah, I think it's a great community. And again, here in Austin, I think we always try to praise each other's work. And to go back to my husband Gustavo, where he didn't know anything about architecture, now as a film, he's trying to focus
Mhm.
himself to as an architectural filmmaker because there's not many of them.
No, that's very niche. That's really niche.
Yes, and like we were talking about, it's like not many people understand, and I think through being married to me and going to places and traveling, he appreciates it differently. He has done many things, and you win awards for certain things as an architect. And this past December, we were surprised that both of us received the President's Award for our recognition and work that we have done at the AIA. And he's like, I would never expect to have ever an
Wow.
award on an architectural place for my contribution for film. But yes, he, again, with the work that we've been doing with the profiles, and he also had exposed himself, and he's like, there was a time that AIA national in general had a whole film challenge. Yeah, they didn't do it last year, but they did it, I think they did it 2020, yes, 2022. And the last one that he submitted, it was more like civic work and how to the topic was very specific. And the year before, we actually submitted because of arbor plans, and that's how he learned that that existed. And Karina wanted to submit because of the same thing. She wanted to try it. We did a whole little video about how she was giving ownership of our work for underrepresented women. And the next year, he decided to do his own thing and submit it, and it didn't win anything, but he then started sending it to film festivals. And all of these film
Wow.
festivals have been picking it up. And just this last week, actually on Friday, somebody had contacted him like Tuesday night or Wednesday night, and he's like, "We need to get your movie. We're doing an architectural week in Perth, Australia." I know,
What?
and he's like, and he's like, okay. And there were no other films being shown than his, and I was like, how did they get your name and why? so so across the
Yeah.
globe, some of these things, and then the movie that he did for that film festival, it's a place here that it was part of an AIA subcommittee that it's called Design Voices, and homelessness is very big around everywhere, and Austin is one of the places that where homelessness is very big, and there is this one organization called Mobiles Loaves and Fishes, and they are a place where they started creating with the AI Design Voices, a competition that architects will create micro homes for the homeless. And now they're on the third phase. So we were able to, Gustavo was able to come up with the idea to bridge that gap with of homelessness and focus on one firm that designed one of the homes. And that's what he did the actual film about. It's called Tiny Victories. And again, it didn't win anything in the AIA. And to this day, we don't know why. Again, I tell him every day, I think the opportunities come because they need to come. And look, because you did that for the AIA Film Challenge, even though you didn't win anything, but you have sent them to so many places that now the recognition and then it's coming back to like they know what Austin is trying to do for homelessness and address that. And just recently too, there was an AI event about urban design, and they partnered with one of the places where he won a film. His film was not selected for that because it was not urban design related. We weren't able to go to that film festival in Detroit last year, but we were able to watch some of the films here because they brought it here. So I was like, that's interesting. And again, the same thing that's happening to him. I was like, we didn't fly to Australia to see and it's a mini documentary. It's not like a film that it's like an hour long. It's just like very little. It's like the one that he needed to do for the AA was 3 minutes, and then he did a long version that's 8 minutes. But again, those 3 minutes are going across many other places, and it's just super inspirational that it is interesting that we architects, sorry, I cannot call myself an architect yet because I'm not registered, but we who study architecture always think that photographs were the way to see our work. But I feel like the
Mhm.
process of film and architecture and the power of it has to tell a story, it's very emotional, and you have to, like, it's the same thing when you're doing a project for anybody. You have to know their story in order to build their project or design their project. So that's where I am now coming to realize that we need the help of the GCs, the filmmakers, the photographers in order to actually showcase our work and be known for what we do.
Absolutely. Alexandra, this has been such an interesting conversation. I have loved you sharing your story and then just learning about the community, how AIA, WIA has been helping women and just in the community sense, and then bridging the gap between architects and filmmakers. And that just within and of itself and the relationship that your husband has now created with the architecture community, it's just been really inspiring to hear about.
Yeah, and we're lucky that we did apply for conferences between him and I and another architect here in Austin that she studied film and then she studied architecture. We've been given some talks. So we started at the local level. We did it here at the Austin Design Excellence Conference. Then last year we were able to do it at the TXA conference at the state level. And this year we're selected and we're going to national. So if you're in DC, we're gonna give out attending this year's conference. We're gonna give that because I think it's the same thing. It's like not many people know that that is a thing that you should do, or when you should do it, or how to do it. So yeah, that's an amazing opportunity. And again, I have applied to have panels in other places and they have been rejected, but because my husband applied and I'm on his panel, I've been able to go to these places. So it's interesting. He's like, don't give up. I'm like, I'm not giving up. I'm not applying for what I want. But it's interesting that this is a new thing that not many people know. It's like AI, you know?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It really is. And it's amazing you guys were able to make it into a team. Well, Alexandra, this has been an incredible conversation. Thank you so much for taking the time to come on From the Honeycomb. And where can listeners find you?
Well, they can find me in Instagram at Chavez Muller, and I will send it to you. My That's my personal. In LinkedIn, we underscore Austin is the Instagram for WIA. So, and then Restructure Studio as well, and Arbor Plans. It's the other one because again, we always try to promote our work, illuminate the women role in the architectural field.
Yes, yes. Well, thank you so much
No,
again.
thank you, Katerina.
Thank you for listening to this episode of From the Honeycomb podcast. As we conclude, I want to express my gratitude for joining me in today's episode. I hope you have found it insightful and inspiring. If you enjoyed today's episode, please take a moment to rate, review, and click that like button so you never miss an episode. And don't forget to share this with your friends. You can follow me on Instagram at From the Honeycomb Podcast, and you can also further your support of From the Honeycomb by visiting the Patreon link provided in the show notes. Your contribution helps make more episodes possible. And lastly, don't forget to subscribe to my monthly newsletter, A Spark of Positive Energy, that comes out on the 7th of each month. Thank you so much, and see you next Friday.